Tim, thank you very, very much. And actually, in the very first marathon in 2006, we had Richard Wentworth, our next speaker, with Marcus de Sotoy, and today, Tim and Richard already know each other as well. That's a dialogue which has been ongoing for a while, so it's a great, great pleasure to introduce Richard Wentworth. I met Richard for the first time when I visited actually as a student London for the first time, and we worked on my first exhibition ever together, the kitchen show. Richard did not only participate, he also gave it the title, World Soup, in 1991. Richard is a key protagonist of New British sculpture ever since the end of the 70s. He's not only altered the traditional definition of sculpture, but also photography. He's making do and getting by, ever-growing archive, and hopefully soon book is one of the extraordinary works. Since 2009, Richard has been professor of sculpture at the Royal College of Art. His recent exhibitions include the Whitechapel Gallery and Tate Liverpool. His exhibition, of course, at the Serpentine Gallery is a wonderful memory. Also in 2009, Richard participated in the 52nd Venice Biennale, which was curated by Daniel Birnbaum and by Jochen Volz, our new head of programs at the Serpentine. A recent group show is Sculpture Now at the National Galleries of Scotland. Today, Richard will be presenting Rear View Mirror, La Voie périphérique. A very, very warm welcome to Richard Wentworth.
Thank you. I think, these are going to be brought forward, aren't they? That's two. Think of these as synapses. It's a real pleasure to come in this morning. I've just driven 100 miles, so I'm slightly high. I promise you, the whole of southern England just looks like God put his foot down. It's amazing. Or took his foot off. To be here after Tim and realize, as you do when Tim's around, that we are dendritic. This is seriously dendritic. You couldn't be here by accident. Everybody made an effort. The number of relationships that are humming around in here is really extraordinary. And we are even in the 60s, which is quite clever to go back 40 years like that with one structure. I want to remind you of the things that, well, some of the words that Tim said, because I haven't spoken to him for quite a while. Other than to say something that Pinter hated, apparently. How are you? Excites, inhibits. Turns out to be true. Dendritic. Sine qua non. Synaptic efficiency. And then the utterly brilliant memorial power. I really like the fact that Thomas Schutter's outside the door, or his work is, and that feeling that those are war memorials that are made before the war. I think they're really, really unusual artworks, and they do something really pretty complicated. So it's very nice to walk into them this morning. It's true that Tim did show me the mouse synapse at work, and you will realize already what kind of sense of humor he has. And I remember him holding up this photograph and going, I suppose you could say this is a mouse's thought. And we made an exhibition called Thinking Aloud, and it was in it. And I love the fact that we exhibited a mouse's thought. I brought something with me which is a commonplace. I don't think there could be anyone here, simply because of the time in which you were born, we live. There'll be somebody here doing a PhD on it. Maybe good, maybe bad. There's nobody here who hasn't been photographed, and there's nobody here who has not made a photograph. question, rhetorical, does that make you a photographer? Does it make you a model? But everybody here has been photographed, and everybody here will appear in something which we still call photography, even if that's the weapon of choice. And one of the commonplaces is that you appear with other people, and you are bonded in that graphical moment. So I brought a picture this morning, and you don't need to examine it closely, but I'll do this. Suddenly feel a little bit Bin Laden doing this. Except it was that, wasn't it? Well, two of the protagonists in this tired image are here. I'm one of them, but you wouldn't necessarily know I was that person because you've got 32 years or 30 years to deal with, and I'm also bending over because I'm attending to the other person's ankle bracelet, which was very fashionable at the time. And then there's a sort of scrap of humanity in the middle, which we call a baby. And it's the chemistry of, it's probably Boots photography, 1980. And it's nearly gone. And so in fact, it's a reliquary. And I looked up the etymology, as I do, of reliquary this morning, and it comes from Lend. It's got the most fantastic run, in fact, a very dendritic run to get to reliquary and memory. So these things stick around. Some of you still have them in your back pocket. Some of you are part-time cab drivers, and you have them behind your sun shield. Some of them have them on your iPhone. Some of you may even have them on the wall and switch them on and have the family go past. Yeah, well. But actually, we address them. We can't not address them. And obviously, it's deeply cultural, and I'm sure there are people here who can talk eloquently about that. So I, in fact, appear in this world. After Walker Evans has done his best work, but not long after. In fact, probably only 8 years after, which is nothing, but I was a baby, and why would I know who Walker Evans was? And really quite a long time after August Sander, who really, without August Sander, you probably wouldn't have German photography. And my mum is at that point in her life where she is jolly old, is pretty alert, can remember, she seems to remember what she needs to remember, and she has a family album. So I'm going to show you some pictures because it's a little bit like coming out. Why would I want to show an audience where I know about 30 people here? Why would I want to show you my family album? But maybe because it exercises something about this idea of belief, and that we actually believe that people are our forebears, and we have some idea of their context, but actually we were never there. I need to look, could that be twisted round so I could see it? Or just slight angle? A little bit more, just a little bit more, because I know that, yeah. So I don't know whether these are nearly legible, but forgive the sunlight. It's not, and anyway, it's photography. Remember, the photo is this thing. It's the sun. So to make my dendritic point a little bit further, through a conversational accident, this picture, all of these pictures are iPhone pictures. So they're already, dare I say it, third, fourth, fifth generation. I think the word generation is really something to address today. Is it generation, or is it just 4G, 5G, 6G? So this is a corrupted picture, but it came up in a conversation. And one wonders really what on earth is going on. There's a man, he's sitting on a slight change in the surface of the ground. Of course, we're humans, so we name things. He's looking through a tent. If you're interested in history of European image making, he's looking the wrong way. He's looking to the past. He's not looking left to right. He's looking right to left. There are a few, I think they're called accoutrements. And you would sort of say it looks like it's probably the last war. Since I'm English, we might say, I think he might be on our side. Do I care? But actually, structurally, it's just the most amazing photograph, and one has no sense of why it was taken or its circumstances. And it's my father, and it's safe to say he's probably younger than most of you, because that's what wars seem to do. So this is already late. I know that it says on the back 1944. It's in Burma. And I know he was in the Air Force. So I don't exist. I'm going to exist in about 3 years' time after this photograph. And it was through somebody here that I decided to make the talk that I'm making, because they said how interesting they thought this was and how much humans pour into these things. Inevitably, I said to my mother, who I've already pointed out has got full memory capacity, what did Daddy do in the war? Cliche. I think actually I said, what was he doing in Burma? And she said with a completely straight face, I've no idea. So we'll never know. He's died 20 years ago. It's not retrievable. But nonetheless, this stuff is what hums around this kind of photography. And obviously, one of the things about this kind of photography is their portability. So this is tucked in another photograph in my mother's room, rather like these photographs, which involve, on the left, a woman I know very well, who is my mother-in-law, a man moving, I'm going left to right, European style, a man next to her in the silver frame, who I don't know because he died in 1951 or 2. 2 children who I know very well, but I don't know them as children anymore because that moment passed, and I wasn't present when that photograph was taken because it's a cliche school picture. Let's charm the parents and relieve them of 10 quid. And then a man on the right who I knew, who really was a very powerful presence in the first 9 years of my life, who was my great uncle. And it suddenly, obviously, there's a falsehood here because I've matched up 2 pictures, but the picture on the right is actually an impossible conversation between 2 little children in 1987, color photography, and a man facing the camera in the correct way in the Grenadier Guards in 1940, probably. Having been in the First War, inevitably born at the wrong moment, you get to be in both. He had a brother who was allegedly very badly behaved, but totally charismatic. And if you're interested, as Mark Wallinger is, in racing, he trained a very famous horse called the Miller, Golden Miller. So here's a picture of Basil, as he was called, sitting on a horse, surrounded by people as people behaved at that time. I'm guessing this is maybe 31. On the right is, I think, on the left, in the picture, and the picture on the right, the erect, composed figure is my grandmother, my mother's mother. This is a picture taken in China. We'll come back to that. The possibly uncomfortable-looking child to her immediate left is my mother. And on her lap, I'm guessing, is another uncle, her brother, who has died. It could be a girl. I don't know. I wasn't there. And already what I'm trying to talk about is how much we want to, dare I say it, penetrate these things, but we can't, but we all do it because we are natural speculators. The uncle that was prepping up for the Second War, who I've already mentioned, was pretty handsome, interesting character, but died when I was 9. This is him, I think, in Auckland, in New Zealand, doing what you did in the 30s if you had a few bob and you could relax. Very small class, but enough of them. Suddenly, everybody seems to be in Hollywood. You know, this sort of photography and this sort of moment, which of course is just a piece of chemistry. It's just a piece of organizational invention that was used then the same way as you might use an iPhone tomorrow. Then in this wonderful speckledy, definitely not an August Sander picture, is my grandfather and so the father of my mother, standing with my mother's mother in China in the 20s. Sort of valued picture, but actually so much contrast that they look as if they're in camo. But the point I'm trying to make is not about me or you know, my cheesy little life. That's a Loudon Wainwright quote. But about the fact that everybody can do this. And everybody can do it, and whatever your stories are your stories. You don't get to make them. You may have great pride, great shame, great confusion. It's what we inhabit. And these are one of those strange keys that we are probably the 3rd generation that can do this. And we clearly do it a lot. One of the things I was thinking when Tim was talking, how much we like to talk to each other. I talk too much. But people, I mean, God, we yammer away because we're so lonely. And that's the only way we can work out who we are. That's how we tell each other things about ourselves and receive things from each other. So the little boy, the little cutie boy in the cutie school photograph was 30 recently. Some of you here know him. He's called Felix. He organized a party. I have no memory of this part of the party at all. I cannot imagine why. But this picture will now migrate and do things. I don't know what the consequence will be. Maybe Hans-Ulrich will be running marathons here in 15 years' time, 20, 30 years' time, and this thing will pop up and somebody else will say something about it. And by way of kind of comedic, perhaps, finish, families have branches, and anyway, the family is an invention, but I won't bring Margaret Thatcher in today. They have branches, and the branches don't always speak to each other. There's something going on between me and my brother at the moment who doesn't live in England, and I'm thinking, oh my God, maybe we will never speak again. How weird. And that will go into that sort of folkloric space of nobody quite knows why, but this da-da-da. So there's part of my family which is a little bit distant, that I'm very fond of. At different points, they've done things to me which were quite key. They've set little examples to me, or been encouraging to me, or offered some kind of optimism, let us say. And there's a great uncle who died on the first day of the Second War, so I never met him. And he had a son, who's my cousin, who was always very good to me, who died about 6 months ago, less even. And then another cousin said to me, have you heard about the Brocklebank car? It's a pretty sort of wacky remark on the street. And I went, what? No. Oh, well, when Charles died, they found this car in the garage. Yes. And they just sold it. It's this car. So this car, which of course doesn't speak, has, well, we associate it with memory because it's certainly not a car you're going to find out in the park now, but it's a car of its moment. So it went on the market, 82-year-old car, one owner, Bonhams, which is lovely because I don't think there's anyone here who's 82. And I lost my car in the summer through a failure to service it properly. And so I spent the last month looking for a car. It's not very interesting. There are about 5 cars left, 5 types of car left. They're all the same. And you actually have to recognize a car by its rear lights or its badge. There's really not much left to do. So it's a very boring month of looking at vehicles. And also thinking, what am I prepared to pay for this need? Anyway, I went for the nearly £7,000 second-hand option. And 2 days before I handed over the cash, this email came from my cousin, and he said, I've got you all the details of the car, and it went for 2.5 million. So stuff changes, and it changes around you, and we're all in it. And maybe that's the most pleasurable thing about being alive, is that we need, I just used the word recognition, we want to recognize things, but actually they're all moving all the time, so we chase them. And it's a bit of a failure, but it's all there is to work with, so we try and enjoy it. Thank you very much indeed.